CBS Sports HQ presented by Jersey Mike Subs. Last night, the Baylor Bears avoiding what would have been the biggest upset in college hoops this season. They were down as many as 17 to the lowly Iowa State Cyclones. Baylor, a 24-point favorite, coming back, taking the lead for the first time in the final 5 minutes and surviving following a 3-week COVID layoff. And they did not drop in Gary Parrish's top 25 and 1, staying put at number 2, right behind fellow unbeaten Gonzaga. There is a new team in the top 5. That would be Alabama, because Illinois lost on the road at Michigan State on Tuesday night, Fighting Illini dropping 1 spot to 6. Let's get to it with Gary Parrish from the Eye on College Basketball podcast. A new pod just dropped, so check that one out. Let's start with Baylor. It's hard to know what to make of really good teams coming off COVID layoffs, because as you pointed out on CBSSports.com, Gonzaga had a long layoff, and they looked great when they returned to play against Iowa. Baylor, the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think that might just say more about Gonzaga than it says about anything else. The Zags are terrific, in a clear top tier by themselves at this point, it appears. And so I don't think we should be surprised that Baylor looked not very good in its first game after a 3-week layoff, for the same reasons that we shouldn't have been surprised when Michigan came back after a lengthy layoff and at least looked bad for a half. The good news for Baylor is that they were playing Iowa State, literally the worst team in the Big 12, a winless team in the Big 12, so you could afford to play bad and win. Obviously, if you're Scott Drew, you'd rather not be down 17 points to anybody, but especially that team. You'd rather not allow an opponent to shoot nearly 50% from the field. Baylor didn't guard the way it is normally guarded. It didn't shoot the ball the way it normally shoots the ball, but it escaped with a 0 still in the loss column. And so you take that win and you just keep it moving, I think.
And still on that one line, obviously, if they continue to win, they'll be a 1 seed. They could probably even afford a loss or 2 and still be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about the guys who just want to be there. The teams right now that are on either the right or wrong side of the bubble, whichever way you want to look at it, according to Jerry Palm and his bracketology. A couple of good ones tonight. Indiana is at Rutgers in the Big Ten. The Hoosiers are the last team in Jerry's field. And Gary, they don't have much room here, and they don't have a big leg to stand on because they're barely above 500 right now.
Yeah, and they're below 500 in the first 2 quadrants. Now 8 and 9, and they've also got a quad 3 loss. So they've had plenty of opportunities to build an at-large resume. Right now they have one, but a loss at Rutgers drops them to 2 games below 500 in the first 2 quadrants. Still got that quadrant 3 loss, and that's where I think Indiana would wake up on Thursday morning and probably find itself outside of most projected brackets. So this is not a, quote, must-win situation. I don't think those usually exist in February, but it is a very important game, particularly when you look at Indiana's remaining regular season schedule. The Hoosiers are going to be underdogs more often than not. They're going to have to win somewhere. Might as well try to do it at the rack tonight.
Indiana currently the last team in, also the first team out in action tonight. That would be Seton Hall, and not as big of an opportunity as Indiana has. I mean, this wouldn't be a great win at Butler. This is a win they have to have. I guess if you're not going to call the Indiana game a must-win, this probably is. You can't afford a bad loss.
I agree with you, Chris. You cannot take a loss here. This would be devastating to Seton Hall's at-large resume. They took a loss to Georgetown over the weekend. That was bad, but it wasn't so bad that it knocks them completely off the bubble. A loss to a Butler team that is not the Brad Stevens Butler teams that we remember would really have them operating at a terrible spot heading into the weekend as we approach Selection Sunday. This team was playing well, and I think it's talented enough to not only get in the NCAA tournament, but get in the NCAA tournament and advance. But they've got to get there. And at this point in the season, any bubble team, you're just trying to do one of 2 things. Add great wins, avoid bad losses. The job for Seton Hall tonight is to avoid a bad loss. I should correct myself. I said earlier, I don't believe there are usually must-win situations in February. I think you're right. This probably does qualify as one.
You can see that one at 7 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. There's also an important game at 5 o'clock Eastern time in the A10. It's Davidson against St Bonaventure, and right now in Jerry Palm's field, the Bonnies are an 11 seed. What are their chances of making the tournament as an at-large?
I think they look good. I mean, they're sitting here in the actual bracket as an 11 seed, as you accurately note. And even if they were to get caught by Davidson here, it's only a quadrant 2 loss. So it's not those quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 losses that really ding up your resume. I don't think St. Bonaventure has to win tonight to remain in Jerry Palm's projected bracket tomorrow. But obviously, if it qualifies as a quad 2 loss, if you lose it, it qualifies as a quad 2 win if you win it. And that is one way to enhance your resume and give you a little bit of wiggle room if you're Mark Schmidt, heading in, as we approach March. And obviously, in the Atlantic 10, it's not like the Big 10 or the Big 12 where you have all of these great opportunities to add quad 1 and quad 2 victories. You only have a pretty small handful. This is a quad 2 opportunity that St. Bonaventure would be wise to take advantage of it. They don't have to, but it would certainly be helpful.
Again, that one at 5 Eastern. The best matchup on paper of the night is the only ranked versus ranked matchup of the night. It's in the SEC. And Matt Norlander, your partner on the Ion College Basketball Podcast, tweeted out a picture of the Alabama men's basketball page on Wikipedia. And someone's already gone in there and said, Alabama, you are the national champions in 2021. They are at number 20, Arkansas, tonight. They're the top 2 seed in Jerry Palm's field. A real opportunity, Gary, to play their way onto that top line.
Especially, if Baylor continues to struggle, as they approach March. I mean, I think the Bears are going to be fine, but if they were to take 2 or 3 losses, then it's not crazy to think that Alabama could sneak onto that 1 line. Ohio State could obviously find itself being vulnerable. I think Gonzaga is basically set, but it is not crazy to think Alabama could be a 1 seed on Selection Sunday. Also not crazy to think Alabama could win the national championship. I won't pick them. I'll probably be picking Gonzaga, like most of America. But Alabama is so committed to a very specific style that they are really, really dangerous for anybody, including the Zags. This is a team that's top 5 in adjusted defensive efficiency, so they really guard you. They're top 10 in adjusted tempo, so they play really, really fast. And then they're going to take about 33 pointers per game. If they are making them at a good rate, you are dead. If they're not, they're still good enough to beat you because of the way they guard. And so I don't care whether you're Gonzaga, Baylor, Michigan, or anybody else. You get into a game with Alabama, and from the tip that they're going to take 33s. If they make 16 on you, which they can do, they have done, you're in big, big trouble. So I really love this Alabama team. I'm not ready to update their Wikipedia page just yet, but if we wake up the day after the national championship game and it actually does say that, it would not be a shock. Nate Oates has got a team that's good enough to win 6 games in this bracket.
You have updated your top 25 and 1, and Alabama is now in your top 5 after Illinois lost last night, but they are underdogs, they being the Alabama Crimson Tide tonight. They are plus 1.5 on the road at a hot Arkansas team. Gary Parrish, thank you so much. You can hear him on the Ion College Basketball Podcast. As I mentioned, a new one just dropped. Among other things, they talk about a couple of blue bloods just trying to get into the tournament. The case for Duke and Michigan State as at-large teams.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.